Thursday night, just after 6 o'clock. This is Brother Sard, and this is a spiritual discussion program. And the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge and the life of truth, the grail message of the truth. I'm in the studio, and hopefully I've got two colleagues joining me tonight. Brother Gregory, are you there?
Hello.
Good evening, Brother Gregory. How are you doing? How's the weather where you are? And where are you?
Well, here in Copenhagen is still very warm
Still very
and
warm.
humid. That is okay.
Very good. And Brother Ryna, please tell us where you are and how's the weather where you are?
I'm here in good old Germany, in my hometown, and the weather has just become sunny again after 2 days of clouds and very slight rain, not enough for the farmers. So the farmers are still desperate, and here in Germany and probably over the continent. And there's a big thing in the government now about giving back money to the farmers because their harvests have largely been destroyed. It goes into billions. But otherwise, I'm quite glad that the clouds are gone again and the weather is really becoming warm again and very sunny. Thank you then.
Thank you very much. In London it has been really warm as well, I think 26 degrees at least.
And we had a lot of rain.
And we've had rain, yes. Last few days we've had quite a bit of rain, which was really required. As you know, we've had so much hot weather up to this time. So, dear listeners, as you know, every week we have a topic for discussion. The topic for tonight is the majority decides. I'm sure we hear that a lot, so we're going to talk about that. So you can join us on this number. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. The London for UK, it is 079 444 31366. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. So as I mentioned, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the Grail message. What is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with the matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I would like to finish with one more quote. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you again, the topic for discussion tonight is the majority decides. And I'd love you to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Brother Gregory, I'm going to start with you, and I've got a question for you. How does the majority stand today? Of course, when we talk majority, we're talking about human beings, so it may not be obvious for some people, but just I wanted to make that clear. So, how do the majority of people stand today? That's to Brother Gregory.
Thanks for that particular question. It said, how do the majority of people stand today? That can start directly by sort of looking or the examination of their activities. For it is said, by their works, that means by their activities, we shall know them, or we know of how they stand. And since their activities have returns in accordance with the laws which are firmly established in creation, that gives us an insight how the majority or how things are stand today. So it's left to each person to examine how he or she sees the effects of these returns, which the majority, or which many a person, how the returns affects their lives. So that determines how things are today and how the majority or mankind stands. For if the fruits, the returns, are upbuilding, these can be perceived first in the environment, in the quality of lives that the people live. If, however, the returns are such that is depressing, then it's a reflection of how the people stand. So how the people stand is only a reflection of the activities which have taken place in the past and also in the present.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. So if we explore that a bit more, there has been a lot of advances in science and inventions and so on over this time, you could say. But still there are lots of other things, which are not really working in people's lives. People are still suffering with poverty and so on and so on. So can you look at it, is there a general picture we can have of the progress of mankind? Or is it like you have to look at it in different fields, that man has progressed in one field and not much in the other field, let's say?
The latter is gives a better picture. There are two basic fields one may consider: the intellectual field and the spiritual field, if one may classify them as those. In the intellectual domain, you have all sorts of advances, be it in the so-called sciences or new discoveries. However, in the spiritual fields, we do not see a corresponding maturity to be able to arrest the decline of mankind. So if at this stage you still see rampant poverty, then it must be as a result of the system which have been put in place. And such systems which tend to denigrate the ability of the human spirit cannot be right. So there's no advancements there. On the other hand, you have advancement in science, which gives us the airplane or music or things of that nature. So the advancement which are seen are basically intellectual advancement, but not spiritual advancement, will lead to spiritual maturity, which spiritual maturity is what the human spirit here has come to experience in order to mature and go back as a self-conscious human spirit from whence it left the paradise of man.
Thank you. I just want to thank Raggedy for his show just before our show began. So thank you for that show, Raggedy. I know you've been here since 2 o'clock, so well done for lasting this weather, hot weather here. So thank you for that, and see you next time. Take care. Next week he's coming back. So Lady Pearls will be here next week. Okay, thank you for telling me that. So thank you for that. So I want to go to Brother Ryna now. Brother Ryna, you know, Brother Gregory has mentioned about the intellectual development and let's say being more quite advanced, but the spiritual development, let's say, falling down or declining even. And could you just explain how did that happen? And you know, in the context of the majority, because we say the majority decides. So if you can give us a picture how that could have happened, that we can advance in an intellectual level, but not in the spiritual level.
Thank you for that question. It's of course a very difficult question in a way, and but let me first say we must see the outer systems we live in, or the situation we live in, as a result or condensate of our spiritual state. And it's the state of the majority which determines the general state in the society, how the streets look, very concrete, how the streets look, how the towns look, are they clean, is litter lying around, all those things is just a manifestation of a spiritual state. So it's not the system, in my view, it's not the system which forms or shapes the human being, or the outer physical conditions which shape the human beings, but it's the human beings, the majority of the human beings, which sets the tone in the society. I'm just saying setting the tone. And we must say, when we say the majority decides, what do they decide? They decide the way the country in general goes, but that does not mean that I cannot pursue my own way in that society. I can be part of a minority, and I can live quite happily if the rules of the society are like this, that they do not interfere with the pursuance of happiness of other people or other groups, and let them undisturbed. And many of the Western constitutions have that built in. So, and so it's just one thing I wanted to say, because the thing's very political. Now, it's true what this previous speaker said, that intellectually and in the fields of science we have advanced enormously, and we can do things which are quite truly astonishing, whereas philosophically or spiritually we have advanced very little. And the reason is very simple for that. We have relied more on the power of the intellect, on the power of rational thinking. And thinking, with rational thinking, we can solve all the problems. And this is the dominant dominant thinking of today. Everything can be solved. If it can be solved by anything, the problems, it is just rational thinking, the appliance of science, and so forth. And the fruit, as the fruit is not too good, and we are swamped with problems. I do not want to go into details of those, right? We are also swamped with them. So to give a very short answer to that complex question, without the background, anything, I say the intellectual knowledge, or the knowledge we are so proud of, the technical knowledge, is a product of rational thinking of the intellect, and it has grown so enormously because we preferred to rely on that and dismissed the spiritual knowledge and our faculties which would allow us to tune into the spiritual vibrations, which would show us on a spiritual level what is right and wrong. And according to the Grail message, or the author of the Grail message, what of course should lead is the spiritual. The spiritual should sense the vibrations of God's will in creation, and especially the woman should attune to that, and that should then filter down and determine in a very gentle way the activity of the male human beings. And that way a whole new society, a whole new life on earth would change fundamentally, and to the better. It's my definite opinion, to the better. But we have chosen as a humanity, the majority has chosen, in fact almost everyone has chosen to rely on the intellect and to train the intellect over thousands of years, to school it, and neglect the spiritual capabilities of the human beings. And today we are so, with time and through adaptation, through the law of movement, through the law of adaptation, like Darwin describes it, we are today in a state that we are spiritually so weak that when almost dead, we do not exist spiritually anymore, and we have only a very clever working brain, a very trained rational thinking, which thinks it can lead in every aspect of life. So it's the answer is simply, we have opted for developing the rational thinking and relying on the rational thinking. Back to you, Sard. Brother Sard, can I just interrupt? Could you come closer to the microphone?
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you. Actually, apologies, I had it on mute there. So, Brother Greg, I'm going to repeat what I said.
Please do.
Yeah, apologies for that. So, basically, Brother Ryna has mentioned, he's given quite a broad answer, and in one part of it, he mentioned that the women should be leading through their finer perceptions and through their intuition and so on, the men in their, in the direction that we should be going. And so, what I wanted to ask you on that. And you can see there is a trend, up till in the history up till now, men have been ruling in all these positions up to now, and and now women are sort of coming more forward, and even the women's equality and so on like that. So would you say that is how it's meant to be, that the women should be equal to the men, and or even in the leading position, like or should be leading the men. So, would you talk more on that?
Well, the key thing here is that there are two sides to this coin. The one that receives and passes on what it has received to the other side. The other side is the executive, whereas the other one is the one that does the receiving. They should be working hand in hand in harmony. One cannot say one now wants to lead. Sometimes one doesn't understand what the word to lead means. But in this particular case, that which receives the fine vibration is the one leading, whereas the other party of the coin is the one, when these vibrations are passed to the other party is the one that carries out, is the executor of this fine vibration. It is very similar to one's intuition and one's intellect. The intuition is the one that picks up the fine vibration, the activities of the spirit, and passes it on to the intellect, which is the executor of this fine vibration. Whenever there is a blockage, wherever both are unable to work in harmony, then you have the quagmire which abound nowadays. So to lead doesn't mean that one has to be the executor, all right, or the executive director. Outwardly, it might appear so. However, if those fine vibrations are cut off, then where will the intellect get its energy or its power or its fineness to know what to do? In that particular case, it will only pick it out from the surrounding, and that tells us where things have been. Whenever that happens, you run into a quagmire. You are unable to make improvement, and then you have things like poverty, which abounds nowadays, or slavery, or haughtiness. This is what you have when the intellect is allowed to take to lead without having the oil that flows from on high, which comes through the woman. Like one said, the example is similar to that of one's intuition and one's intellect. So when you have a transposition, if you now have a situation where the woman who senses the fine vibration wants to now become the executive director, then those fineness will be suppressed. It's unable to do that which creation has assigned to her. And therefore, there will be another change. That is not what is intended. So that will not be right. What is right is the woman picking up the fine vibrations and passing it on to the executive director in such a way that they now work in harmony. So each one standing at their post. That is the key.
Thank you, Brother Gregory, for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And if you want to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grail.org. www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic for discussion tonight is the majority decides. So please do join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. That's 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 313 66. And you can listen to us on our website, which is blessedradio.org, or you can go to youtube.com and search for Blessed Radio 1 lives and look for Blessed Radio 1 live stream, and then you can listen to us live on YouTube. And then 10 minutes after our show, which is finishing at 8 p.m., you can listen to the recording of our show, and then you need to look for Blessed Radio 1 and then search for Brother Sard or Bro Sard and the Grail message. And tonight's topic is the majority decides. So you can listen to us later on as well. So I'm going to go back to Brother Ryna now. Brother Ryna, we've been talking, the effect of the majority, because obviously the majority has the bigger say with these actions obviously having a bigger impact. But let's look at the minority as well, because we mustn't forget them. They also have some, let's say they may have to suffer the consequences of the majority on themselves. So I want to ask you, Brother Ryna, on that does that mean the minority, because of the majority has such a big effect or influence in the world, does that mean the minority has to just suffer whatever it is that the majority does, and not, they're like under the fate of whatever the majority decides?
Well, I think that depends how one looks at it, and it depends also where one geographically situated, in which country one is. Generally, I can say I cannot avoid, for example, that the television program in Germany just shows nothing but crime and football, and that football rules. And if I do not like football, of course, there's not much on TV. And if I'm spiritually interested, in addition, I do not like football, I'm spiritually interested and would like a spiritual program, I definitely cannot see it in the main hours. I might see it at 2 o'clock in the morning, at night, but definitely the majority decides what the TV program is. But that does not mean that I cannot go my own way, at least I'm talking now in my view in the European countries, Northern European countries, and perhaps United States. Of course, I can read the Grail message and no one stops me. I can read the Bible, and although the majority goes a different way, and pretty undisturbed. And I can look on YouTube, for example, to things which interest me. There are hundreds of very lovely things which the majority is not interested, and I can pick out those and can go my own way, pretty much undisturbed. I think the danger comes when an ideology is reigning in a country and they try to penetrate the private sphere of the individual. And if they really try to say, you have to think this, or you have to be of this and this religion to live in, when living in here in that country, then things become difficult, and then we talk about a totalitarian regime, and that's a different question. Then it becomes very difficult to go your own way, and you have to dissimulate, and you have to pretend to play according to the rules of the system, and life is very uncomfortable. But fortunately, and I'm very grateful for it, in our societies here where we live, which is the UK and England, I think it is not bad. It's a great thing that the state does not, and the ruling ideology does not penetrate into my room and tells me you have to watch this or to read this book, and I can still find things in the media which interest me. I hand it back to you, Sard.
Thank you, Brother Ryna, for that. So now I want to look at things in a spiritual sense as well. You know, we know on the earth that obviously the majority has a big effect on the way the world goes. Does that also apply in the, let's say, in the beyond and in the spiritual world, Brother Gregory, that there's a majority a particular way and that's how it works there as well? And, you know, are we affected like that over there? That's to Brother Gregory.
The scenario you are painting is very different. For there are laws in creation which are sharper as one moves away from the influence of the earth. In that particular scenario, those of similar thoughts, they come together. So it's not a matter of having a majority or having a minority. It is the attraction of homogeneity that holds sway. So if you have many who have similar thoughts and those thoughts are depressing, murderous thoughts which are depressing, of course you have an accumulation of such that they will experience where such thoughts will lead them. Whereas if you have a few people who have noble thoughts of upbuilding, of course those come together, you have an accumulation of such that they are able to express themselves by supporting themselves and also swing in accordance with the will through which creation itself came into existence. Because in doing so, the waves that issue out of creation will be in support of the activities since they harmonize with this. Whereas with the other group, whether there are many or majority, whatever one cares to call them, such will not receive such support as will make them swing up in accordance with the laws of creation. Therefore, in that particular scenario, the likelihood that they will have to suffer bitterly until they come to the realization that pursuing such thoughts or granting permission for such thing to come into being is only a product of their activity. It is they who have created that environment and for themselves, and those that have similar tendency have come and united with themselves and has caused such hideous and terrible suffering. So the laws are sharper and grants to each one that which he himself has brought into being.
Thank you so much for that, Brother Gregory. From what you have said, it looks like the earth is a bit of a learning ground, and so there's more opportunity to, let's say, mess about. But in the beyond, if you mess about, it's like you face the consequences much harsher. You said it's, I can't remember the word you used. The laws are stronger or sharper. You said the laws are sharper there. So, yes. So somehow the effect on the earth is, let's say, softened. I mean, the same laws apply. We know in the universe, in the physical, in the non-physical as well, non-material world, it's the same laws apply. Just obviously the effect is greater in the beyond than it is on the earth or the material world. So what I wanted to So what is so? Yeah, is that does that mean that God is not allowing us to have more chance on the earth to grow and learn, and then like the beyond is like the next level for development, and there, you're supposed to have learned your lesson, and you get hit more hard if you have done wrong. That is, you get hit harder there, and then, or of course, if you've done good, you get rewarded quicker as well. Is that what it is going on? Is that what it is? That's to Brother Gregory.
Well, you have the earth as a training ground where a lot of good and a lot of evil or bad things they live side by side. And in this particular scenario, people or many a person is able to learn very quickly because the reciprocal action does not come almost immediately, it comes gradually. So people can make mistakes and learn almost immediately because you now have the possibility of good and bad, coexisting. And if there is something bad, you can easily learn the lesson and say, oh, that is not right. Whereas in the beyond, where there is a complete separation, that possibility does not exist. All right, because the reaction is sharper. So here on it, you have, you have people of varying maturity, and that now grants the opportunity for one to even make a mistake, genuinely or not, and then learn from it. The possibility is also there you can learn from others and seeing what is happening and seeing the returns of the activities they've carried out in the past or even in the present. So here the earth is a great school for one to learn and learn quickly, whereas such possibilities do not exist where you have that which is good and that which is bad coexisting in the same plane.
Thank you for that. I'm going to Brother Ryna now. Brother Ryna, going back to the state of the world of the majority today, would you say that the majority of people are evil? Because when you look at the people, and if it was people were really majority of people were evil, then you would really have a disorder and destruction going on left, right, and center, or would it be more that people just don't have the knowledge of life, how life works, and they're just ignorant, and rather than actually deliberately evil? That's the majority. I'm talking with the majority again. That's to Brother Ryna.
Thank you for the question. Again, a very
sorry, it's a tough
a very dangerous question. I'm
Yes.
definitely not saying the majority is evil.
Yes.
If anyone wants me to say that. So let's think a little bit. Of course, one has to say humanity has decided to rely on rational thinking, on the intellect, and they have developed a hostility towards that which is spiritual. Now you might think, oh, why hostility? I mean, in most people there are very established religions. Some states call themselves God states, in inverted commas. It's very dangerous to say such a thing, and but it is called generally a God state. So religion plays a very big part. But once we come to a deeper spiritual understanding, or to a closer to the truth, I say we're just coming closer to the truth, the picture does not look like this, that the humanity is mostly religious, because also the religions, those God states, they have very bitter fruit. In fact, they are the most bitter fruit probably on this earth, where you definitely don't want to live, at least if you think like I am, is in a so-called God state. I'd almost prefer to go to hell instead of such a state. And so if you look at religion, we always think, oh, these are the servants of God and they lead humanity towards God. But this was not the case. When there came fresh knowledge, for example, fresh knowledge to the earth, fresh, I mean true knowledge of how things are, how things work. That's religion, a knowledge of how things work. And we have to know, to get something to work properly, how it works. We live in creation, so we must know, to get good results, how the laws in creation, how they work, what they are. And Jesus was such a person who came on, who came to earth to bring humanity that kind of knowledge. And it was just the religious authorities of that time who worked against it with all their power and really could influence the masses. The majority at that time in Israel, the Jewish majority, then they could influence them so much and drive them into the frenzy that Jesus Christ was murdered. So at a very short time, a very short life on earth, and it shows really that the Antichrist, that anti-Christian behavior is really in the established religious class of the time. And this has not much changed. In fact, it has become worse. So the people, of course, there are many people who look for guidance and who look, how can I get things to work again? How do I get out of the situation which I'm in? And they feel it's quite desperate situations. Millions of people even in terribly desperate situations. And surely there are many amongst them who ask how I can get out. And the answer is simply, you must look for the knowledge which explains how things work. And in my opinion, that knowledge is revealed or partly written down in the Grail message. There's so much in it which really helps any human being out of any situation. It might be as desperate as it can be. There is a way out, and I think everyone should trust. Don't despair, don't go to suicide. There is a way out. The laws of creation are there, and you can work yourself out. So definitely, I think among all those people suffering under the present circumstances, which are brought about by the majority, by their reliance on the intellect and the concurrent hostility towards a true knowledge like the one Jesus Christ brought. But the people who are searching, there is a way out, and there are many people who want that. I guess I'm at least a substantial number, hopefully, who want that and who are genuinely searching for that answer. And they must weigh themselves. They must weigh if someone proposes something as an answer, and there are many people who propose answers to all kinds of things. And it is said in the Bible, at the time when the true prophet comes, or the true Son of Man comes, bringing the truth, it will be teeming with false prophets. And so, but amongst those false prophets, there should be the right one. And every individual has for himself to find that and to weigh and to look at the message. You have to look at the things written down, read them, examine them, and weigh them. Is that right? Does that explain something? Does that help? And I think if that person has a spark of his spirit still alive within him, he will recognize that there's such a knowledge which can show him the way out, the way back out towards the light and out of the current situation he's in. So to answer that situation, yes, I think there are people looking, good people looking for a way out and who suffer from the present circumstances. But of course, the majority, I would say, nowadays, even if they pretend otherwise, I think they are not looking genuinely and are not prepared to go to something, to examine the new and follow that. I think they might even not be able to recognize those things. So okay, the majority definitely is not searching for the light and is not caring about the will of God, definitely. And but I think there must be a number of people who despair and think another way of life should be possible, and a way of life which is liberating and free and which would bring beauty and splendor, the splendor back to this life here on earth.
Thank you, Brother Ryna, for that. I want to follow on from what you've been saying there, Brother Ryna, because, you know, let's say religion, you already said that religion has, let's say, got distorted or even corrupted by people, and, you know, so people have lost faith in those teachings, let's say. I mean, you can't make it totally general, because we know in some countries religion is very strong and others is collapsing, and people have lost faith in those things. They just think science is the way, and others are just saying, well, so their faith is the way.
Yes, definitely.
And so for those who are, let's say, on the way, for them the religion has lost its way and doesn't answer those things anymore. It's like even contradictory in what it says. They don't even look there anymore, and they probably rely on science totally, and then they get disappointed from that too, because obviously certain science can't answer everything either, you know, but maybe just better than the let's say the faith. In their eyes is better than the faith because of it makes more sense to them. So now, and we have said majority are like in trouble because they, you know, whether you're in the faith or whether you're following the science even, because it's like they are still not sufficient, or let's say 100% accurate in their things to be relied on. So, and we're obviously offering in this program the Grail message to people to examine it, and to see it for themselves, what it provides. So can you say, you know, because it looks like it's only the minority who are really serious or want to really find a way out, you can say, is it possible on your own to discover that? Because how I want to put it is, most people have never heard of the Grail message, you know. We say that this is the way to answer questions of life, but majority in the world know nothing about it, and unless somebody's happened to come across their path, it's the only, most likely that is the only way they'll find out, because just by searching on your own, you know, unless you've, let's say, something happens to you that you find it. So how do you think people can find it and can come to it? Is there a certain way they have to be? Because obviously, like I said, most people don't know.
Well, I would say, there's a simple term of that saying, which is ascribed to Jesus Christ, probably is from him. If you are searching, you will find. That's a promise. And if people do not find the answer or the knowledge which leads them out, they are probably not searching right. So we really should have to talk about it. What is searching? And of course, um, searching is a desire for the truth, and of course it is driven by also some part of it is definitely I'm despairing, I'm in a situation, I have to get out, and I do not see a way out, but I want to find the knowledge to get out of this situation. But also a very rich or a person in a good situation might be in spiritual hardship, and he might be overcome by a feeling of deep senselessness, and to search with that humility and without any prejudices and without any arrogant behavior, arrogance towards the light, and that is very rare, and I think probably we should talk about it at some other point, to really what is searching in the true sense, what is a seeker. And most people who call themselves seekers, I definitely would not call seekers. And so it's definitely one of the presuppositions of being a seeker. One of the conditions is you must be able to think logically and believe that God's system or the way God works, it is logic and it's understandable, because you believe God is good and he does not want absurdities or you blind belief. He wants you to understand what you have to do and how you have to live here on earth. So you have to be prepared to logically approach it and leave your prejudices behind, prejudices which are most of the times hidden demands on God, and also be spiritually aware, not to be detracted by things. If you have to search spiritually and to search the truth, for example, in the Bible, it's a spiritual book, and there are many things. You must not take things literal there. If it says the Son of Man will come on a cloud, that is surely true in one sense, but definitely not in the physical sense. And if people are just waiting here that he descends on a rose-colored cloud, the Son of Man, or and bringing the truth and bringing the judgment, that's surely not the case, because that's spiritually meant. And later on there are other sentences in the Bible where it says it will be not noticed by the majority of humanity. They will not notice that the bridegroom, the Son of Man, has been here. And that's what the Bible warns all the time. You must have this light of the silly virgins. You must have your lamp in order to throw that good light where you actually see things as they are. If you do not have the light, you are blind. Then you must. This light is also one condition, that light, of course, is our spiritual, that we still can receive spiritual vibrations, that we are still spiritually alive and see how things are beyond the physical appearance. And those physical vibrations, which are of course in the truth, because the truth comes from the very highest point, it comes out of God, we must still be able to perceive those vibrations and must be spiritually alive. So there are many preconditions, I want to say, to find the truth. But I would say definitely wherever you are, in whatever country, whatever language you speak, you can find the truth if you want to, and if you really seek for the truth.
Thank you so much, Brother Ryna. I've got a guest in the studio with me. Say hello.
Hi.
What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Mystical Malika.
Mystical Malika. Okay, welcome.
Hi, nice meeting you. I just wanted to state a few things just from my own personal journey. Just being lost and confused, born within a Catholic family and not actually feeling anything being in church. To eventually find the spiritual guidance, find it within myself, find God within me. And what helped was meeting a spiritual guider that done my chakra cleansing, certain massages, just cleansed my chakra. I felt new, light. I wasn't eating meat. I became vegetarian, which made my body lighter. And then eventually I could hear, I could feel everything around me. I was seeing beyond what I can see now, going back to normal, because meat is an addiction. Everything, loads of things are an addiction in our daily life that we just don't know. And I mean, it got to that stage that I could actually hear people's thoughts, as mad as it would sound, but their body language, I can hear it. They're saying one thing to me, but I can hear the truth, and the truth was just there, it was vibrant. And it's just simply acknowledging love, being loving. Us, me, genuinely, I'm a loving person. That's why I tend to get attacked a lot, and try and overcome judgment, because it's very easy for us humans to just judge and think all sorts. You see someone and you instantly judge them without even thinking deeper within their book, and that's very horrible. So it took a while for me to even I would always, if any thought came to my mind, I would overcome that. I'd tell myself that is wrong, shouldn't. I'd bring myself right down to humble and see everybody for what they are. We're all the same. Doesn't matter where you come from. We as living beings, life is life itself, and just respect and love. If we could share that, if we focused a bit of that energy on that, rather than those meaningless rectangular bits of paper, we'd be going somewhere. But people seem to be fighting for the wrong thing. No one's really considering to, let's grow our food, let's become independent, stop supporting these corporations so much, support our little businesses. Then life will change, and hopefully that's the aim, to inspire and encourage people to do that. I'm going to stop now.
Okay, thank you.
It's lovely being here.
Thank you. Welcome to the. Are you coming again to the radio show?
Most likely
You're
we'll
gonna come.
arrange something, but
Okay.
it's my time to be back. I'm an old school family member known
Okay.
as Sweet Angel.
Okay.
It's mystical Malika now.
Okay.
Angel-like.
Okay, angel-like. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Yes.
All right.
Good. Thank you. Thanks a lot
Yes.
for that. Thank you. And yeah, look forward to seeing you sometime again. Take care. Thanks a lot. Brother Ryna or Brother Gregory, did you want to have any discussion a bit more, or that was it? Was it?
I just wanted to get a point.
You just wanted to
through
share that with
because-
us?
Yeah,
Yeah?
I wanted to share it because
Yeah.
you lot are sort of on the topic.
Yes.
And I just want people to understand the things we put in our bodies
Mm.
are very important.
Mm.
So if you're putting, a bit of fat of that pork in your belly, then that's what you become. That's what you are.
Yes.
Once you're eating those lovely vegetables, you're growing tall,
Yes.
mentally, physically, spiritually,
Yes.
emotionally. 'Cause you're not angry anymore
Mm.
when you cut out those dead meats, depression,
Mm.
and genetically engineered.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot. Take care now. So, what I'm going to say, because the topic is not on this exactly tonight, is fine. But I guess we can't go into details today. I can say, because obviously in this show we talk on the Grail message on every topic of life, and a lot what you have said, it does make sense. Let's say we have a slightly different angle on some of what you said. It's not everything ties in with what you say. And because we always look at the spiritual dimension in everything, even though we're on the earth, and that's what we eat makes us as well, but there must be a spiritual angle to all of that. Although spiritual is not material, on the earth it's all, we're obviously living in the material world here, but there has an effect of how the, because at the end of the day, the spirit is meant to rule. Even if you're on the earth, the spirit is meant to rule as a human being. So, and of course, we are wearing a body on this earth, and what we eat does make us what we are. But so the real, for us, what is in the Grail message, everything has to align with the spirit. So whatever you're eating and everything, so what you have said, a lot of things, it makes sense. But I will say the basic line is balance.
Yeah.
So I will not say that you must become vegetarian. It may be good for some people, but it may not be good for everybody. Because the simple line would be, one man's food is another man's poison. So it's got to be, obviously we all breathe. There's certain basic things which are common to everybody. But the main, as I said, the main fundamental point in everything that we will look at, it must, whatever it is that we are doing, must align with our spiritual principles and spiritual. So what I mean by that is, if the spirit needs to use this body to work on the earth, it's vegetables are good. Nobody denying that. But for us, what we know is the meat is also required. But certain things, it mustn't be. It just got to be in balance. That's the simple. Without going to the specifics of it, why, how, and when, because we could go into detailed discussion on that. So for us, yeah, some things. Just so you are aware, like just to give you that picture that.
It's that spiritual, the living, it's alive.
Yeah.
That spirit, I believe that it latches on, even the depressed eggs, the caged chickens, those depressed
Oh
eggs
yes,
that
of course,
us.
yes.
And
Yeah.
personally, that's my belief. That a lot
Yeah.
of things
No,
that
that I
learned
agree. Yeah.
Within myself,
Yeah.
I weren't really taught. The healer healed me, and then things were just coming. I learned them
Yes.
from within myself. I felt within
Okay.
myself. My heart told me that those souls, those living things, are connected to me
Right.
because they're alive and we are eating them. It's as if killing somebody.
Yeah.
People think killing that person, you've actually got rid of them.
Yes.
Or is that person right beside you waiting for you
Yes.
in that spiritual
Yes, of
side?
course. Yeah. I mean, no, I got your point. Yeah, I got your point. Yeah. I mean, there is that. There is that. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't actually eat a spirit, obviously.
It just latches onto your
But there is a consequence for murdering or harming. Let's say call it harming. There is always a consequence, and basically we call these natural laws. They bring all those things. Whatever you sow or whatever action you do, there's a reaction, and the natural laws bring the reaction. So you do the action, and so yes. So if you harming someone, for sure, that's not good, and that's going to be a negative reaction on you, obviously. Yeah. If I were to little bit go into it, I would say, just to give that picture really, animals eat animals, right? I know animals are not humans. So if you look at it, that is, I'm not saying that automatically justifies for humans to eat animals. It doesn't automatically justify that. But if that was not right, if that was not completely, let's say, out of order, if I can say like that, then obviously I could say that they would be also in courts doing wrong.
They're animals, and that's what makes us different.
Yeah.
To animals.
Yes, there is that point. There is that point. It's just, yeah. But it's like what you need. That's what I want to say. It's about what you need. So it's not, because otherwise the animal is killing another animal, and that's harming another animal. And for me, animals obey nature, or let's say they don't do wrong. From what I see, nature's, man can kill 1,000 human beings or kill 1,000 animals just because he wants to do it, not because there's any good in it, right? While an animal, if he kills, in quotes, he's only killing because he needs to eat that. That's for his life. Not he would not do a massacre. There will never be an animal who does that. It's only what it needs that it does. While the human being can do that. So I know this doesn't completely answer it, but if the animal was doing wrong, in quotes, it would, like we couldn't do the same thing as well. So it's like, what I'm trying to say is there's a spirit to
We're
further.
power tripping as humans, to be honest. I reckon it's a power trip more than, because our spiritual, our soul knows.
Yeah.
We know better, but our human, we're in that humanly life, we're addicted to those things. That's what we know. So
Well, that is, let's say, unfortunately happened because we have gone too far. basically the bottom line is balance. That's what I really want to go like that. So it's not, to me, you're not actually animal eats an animal for its food. So if you look at it from that side, and you don't call it wrong, if you don't call it wrong, then a human does, if he does the same thing, it's still okay. Obviously.
That's how you explain it to yourself.
No, I don't have to explain. It's not like explaining. There's a deeper picture in it, which is let me say this way. We have this body, right?
Yeah.
And it has. But who is the driver of this body?
Soul.
The soul or spirit. That's the word we use for. You can call it soul as well. But the soul has to interact with its body. The soul must be able to control its body perfectly. It means the body must be healthy. So what I'm trying to say is, vegetables alone, that's basically what I'm coming to, is not sufficient in most cases.
So may I suggest we take this on another level at some other time?
Yeah, I know it's
not
the subject of today's program, but I only wanted to share it, just to share something really, that the picture is bigger than what people suspect. Because this is more than the earthly activity we're doing here. It's actually a spiritual activity. So our life is not to live on the earth forever. It's actually to grow and develop spiritually, which is not on the material world, it's higher up. And for us to operate with all our spiritual capabilities, we need the physical body to be active, fully active, let's say usable in every level. And so I hear what you say. Yes, all those vegetables, they help you, but they must. It's like, let's say you became totally psychic. It's like too extreme, right? So I'm not saying that's what vegetables will do, but if just needs to be balanced, that's the bottom line. You need this and you need that for you to operate on all your levels that you need to as a spirit. That's basically it. So it's not about killing. That's the point I want to make. It's not you're not killing something. It's because you need it, and that is the priority. That's the point I just really want to put out there. So just because people may not see it, they will say, oh, I'm murdering something, I'm eating something. And it's obviously, that's how it looks on the surface. But there's something deeper behind that. So it's not killing because you're murdering someone. Because otherwise the animal would be wrong as well to do that. It would be wrong for animals to do it as well. And it's not, an animal obviously are not doing in that way. They're not doing that. And I know we are not animal, in quote, we are higher than an animal in terms of our abilities and so on. But let's say it's just like being, like I said, the word balance is the simplest answer I could give you.
We'll leave it at that then.
Yes, of course.
And
yeah.
Mr. Cool Malika will be back.
Yes,
at
welcome.
Some point.
See you again.
Take care, guys.
Take care now. Thank you.
Take care, Angel.
All right. So going back to the show, dear listeners, the topic for tonight is the majority decides. And again, to invite you to with any questions or comments, the number to contact us here in the studio in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. And you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. I'm going to go to Brother Gregory now. Brother Gregory, Brother Ryna mentioned, like, let's say there are probably a minority of people who are looking for a way that makes that life actually works, that they are successful in their life and they have a healthy life and they progress spiritually. So what I wanted to say, since we have established that the majority are not going in that direction, they are using the intellect more than their spirit, more than their intuition, and we know that the majority have the bigger say or the bigger effect. If that is the case, how can the minority by themselves succeed in their lives, in a, let's say, spiritually and otherwise? Can they, or something has to happen to, because as I said, the majority always get their way at the end of the day. So how can the minority live a life that they're happy and they're healthy and they're develop spiritually?
Well, when the minority is mentioned, it is assumed that those who constitute the minority use their intuition effectively in order to grasp the processes and the activities around them. If by that is what we mean by minority, then through the same process, with a strong and good volition, and through their intuition, they will be well guided. For there is none who seeks diligently that will not find. Like Brother Ryna mentioned, that is a promise. That was a promise and is a promise that whoever seeks diligently will find. So as long as the minority is not idle and is filled with a longing and is striving after that which is noble, then the returns or the reactions will be that their activities will attract those who are ready, one way or the other, to assist them. It doesn't mean that they have to be, or they could have been perfect at the beginning. It only means that as long as they set their sights towards that which is noble and strive after it, they will receive in equal measure the necessary strength through their intuition, through other activities that they will be pushed to, that will help them in the realization of that which they seek. So none is left without help if genuinely they are in need of help. But there are many who say they are in need of help, and yet when this help comes, they turn the other way. So the so-called minority, if along the line they are firm in their resolution, that help will be rendered unto them in the measure of their, when I say their faith or their openness to receive this particular help.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I'm just going to ask my two colleagues, is there anything they would like to share from the Grail message at all with the listeners with regarding to the tonight's topic? The majority decides. Is there anything you'd like to share from that? Okay, I'll assume that you haven't got anything to share at the moment. So I'm going to ask Brother Ryna now. You could say this is a political question, but we want to look at it still from a spiritual point as well. So, you know, when we say majority decides, we think of elections and voting and democracy, let's say. And then we know in the old days there were kings ruling, you know, or a chief ruling a group of people or country. And of course we know from history, you know, the kings maybe became corrupt or just went astray somehow, and then people overthrew them and took this democracy. And so I just wanted to say, ask Brother Ryna really, you know, is there a system how the, you know, earthly society is supposed to be ruled? Is it like, should it be the majority deciding like in an election, or should it be a king who sort of, I don't want to use the word he's autocratic, because he's supposed to be a servant of the people and he's supposed to be a wise person. So you know, and so could you tell us, say something about that, Brother Ryna?
Thank you for the question. Again, one of your treacherous questions.
Yes.
so, so I definitely will not say simply this or that is right. Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If we look, the main thing is that we become spiritually alive again and study the laws of creation and try to live according to those laws, and also try to apply these laws in our daily life. That will bring out many changes, also changes of a political nature in the end, and many things will change. And the main thing today is not to discuss, oh, is this type of political system better than the other, or this type of economic system better than the other. The thing we have to do nowadays, which is really urgent, is to come back in touch with that will of God and learn to obey that will of God, learn to pick up those vibrations of the will of God, put the woman onto that, the woman takes its role, it must take that very high role, and then of course many things will change. And also the political systems, if it's the right one, it will change to the better, or if there's a definitely completely wrong one, it will fall away, it will collapse, and something else will come instead. So we should not direct our side to the political systems and put one over the other. That depends on many questions, and it is very difficult to answer. It depends on the people, and on the spiritual maturity of the people, but one can, and on many other things. So I think there's not a simple answer, and I want to avoid the answer and say, oh, the monarchy is right or something like this, or it's definitely not right, a monarchy for every people on this earth. And in that country, I don't know if a tribe in somewhere the Aborigines want to be ruled in a monarchy. Surely not. They wanted a tribal leader, and it's the right thing for them. And a monarchy might be right, a democracy might be right, but definitely the forms of all those things will change if we direct our eyesight towards the spiritual. The spiritual is the importance. That is where we failed completely. We have not looked after the spiritual dimension, and if we reestablish that dimension, many things will change. Let me take one very simple political system. So I'm not talking so big about a political system at all, but just one little thing, which is very important. In a lot of novels in the 19th century, which I read from the Brontes or something, the big problem women have is always we have no material means. And there were very good women who did an enormous good, who wrote books which we are reading today, wonderful women who really showed role models of women and looked at the political situation and the spiritual situation and the moral situation, the manners in the society, and everything depicted those things. But there was one rule in England which bypassed the women when if something, how do you call it, in a heritage. So women could not inherit, only the male descendants could inherit from a father or something. So if a father and a mother had all daughters, they would not get anything, and it would go to even a very distant relative, and that's depicted many times in Jane Austen's novels, and it's a big problem. Well, this would be one law which definitely must change, because it is not right that the women should be deprived of material wealth and it only flows to male people. And that will eventually, that will be changed if the woman takes again the leading role, and we look up to the woman as bringing purity down here on earth. And then what happens is that those laws which come into existence and the jurisdiction will be, of course, changed under that feminine influence, and the jurisdiction will not become anymore just only letters. It's written here in the law, but it will become much more humane, and the women will have a huge field of activity. But it will be a silent field, a very delicate field, a very feminine field. And if they become feminine, of course, all those political laws will also change. And it will be made sure that also material wealth, for example, flows towards women and does not bypass them. So I just talked about one single political law, not about a whole system. I hope that that this answer is suffices for the moment.
Thank you for that, Brother Ryna. Okay, I'm going to go to Brother Gregory next, and I'm just thinking what Brother Ryna said, really. I mean, he's pointed out that really our direction is to seek out the will of God, find out what the will of God is. And he's also highlighted about the laws, that we need to, rather than looking for a system, we need to find the law, obey the laws, get to know the laws, and work with these laws.
Yeah, they will change as an after effect. If we stand spiritually properly again and start aligning with the will of God, those political systems will change gradually and fall in place. Some things will collapse, and we do not have to worry about so much. And we definitely do not have to talk about the political thing. That's the wrong thing. To talk about the political is earthly organization, and earthly organization is not the problem. The earthly organization is wrong because it's not guided by the spiritual. And today people want only to be political and discuss political things, which just are rational thinking. Because the rational thinking is how do we do this and how do we organize this? That's politics. And how do we make sure that the old age pensioners have enough to live in the future? If you think only about those political things, you are not entering in that new dimension, which is spiritual. We must become spiritual. You just remain in the rational, in the material things, and think by organizing material things we can come to solutions. But we cannot come to solutions by organizing material things. Politics talk all the time, and they discuss all the time, and on Saturdays and Sundays all the politicians go on talking, and we read papers, and there's billions of tons printed everything. Every human being nowadays is political. That's wrong. And that's why things are like this, and why we do not come to a conclusion. We must think of the spiritual and become spiritual. And then the political things will solve themselves. Not in one day, but in time.
So thank you for that, Brother Ryan. So I'm basically, that's very good, because now I can ask Brother Gregory, what is it? We've talked about the will of God, we've talked about the laws, and maybe this is the time, I know we've mentioned many times in the program about the laws, but maybe this is the time to remind us about the laws again, Brother Gregory, what the laws are, these laws that we need to discover, we need to follow, and then I can follow after that, how we can live the life with being aware of these laws. So Brother Gregory, could you please tell us again, I know you've said it before in other shows, what the natural laws are, the laws of creation, which represent the will of God, that we have to, without which we can't really live successfully.
Basically, even during the time of Christ, and when he mentioned it very clearly, when he summarized all the laws and said, love thy neighbor as thyself, or if that were the case, then you would not, since you will not consciously want to hurt yourself, you wouldn't also want to consciously hurt your neighbor. And you will give your neighbor the necessary consideration in many of the things you do. These were things which were discussed, and for those who at that time strived to live accordingly, they were quickly able to find their way. But now, through the walk in the light of truth, the Grail message, it has been condensed to the format that many an intellectual will also understand. And one of the laws is that of homogeneity, the law of attraction of those things which are homogeneous. By the homogeneity, we have an attraction which tends to form things in a different way. But birds of a feather do flock together. And these are sayings which many have recognized. But again, this one is based on the attraction of homogeneous species. These particular law apply not only to human spirits as such, but also to their thoughts, to their striving. For those of noble thoughts or noble striving, they tend to come together to build up. So you have societies that come together for one thing or the other. The same thing happens to those of ignoble leaning. So in their strivings, they, depending on the various and the degree of ignoble things they harbor within themselves, they automatically come together to carry out what they wish to do. There's a second law which has to do with gravitation. That which is very dense tends to sink, and that which is lighter tends to rise, which is seen physically, is experienced physically, which may be called gravitation. But also this applies to spiritual things or beyond the earthly activities. And for those which are very dense, by their nature they sink closer to the earth, and those which are more noble and they are more powerful and they are more versatile, they tend to rise. So these are the things which you find. So the law of attraction of homogeneous species and the spiritual law of gravitation, they come hand in hand in the furthering of the activities in creation. And there is a third law which basically has to deal with what many will refer to action and reaction, or things going around in circles. You put something in creation, it matures, it grows and matures and comes back to you. And sometimes it's referred to as a reaction, but it's a return. The sowing and the reaping, the law of to sow and to reap. There is no person who sows and would not reap. But when the returns comes, it may not be in the same earth life. It may span different earth lives. So basically, these are just a simple description of the mechanisms or the laws that orders creation the way it is, through which even we ourselves came into existence. They are the supports and the pillars of creation that keeps it moving.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Brother Ryna, I just want to sort of talk about the times we live now. We've been talking mostly of the human beings' activities, but in the news you hear a lot nowadays. A lot of, recently there have been earthquakes, volcanoes, almost on a weekly basis, erupting, and we've mentioned many times before that the Son of Man is being predicted to come and bring this knowledge to help mankind, and also at the same time there are false prophets also around. So is there something happening, Brother Ryna, at this time that we live now, where, there's some sort of change happening, or I could say, like Brother Gregory mentioned, there's action and there's reaction, and maybe a lot of reactions are coming now. The time we live today, everything's faster nowadays, isn't it? Maybe 10, 15 years ago, obviously we know with technology things are much, much quicker and so on. And maybe nature is also doing the same thing. Things are happening. So is it something happening, Brother Ryna, something big happening in the time we live now?
Brother Sard, if if you allow me to answer that question a little later,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I want just to bring something in which is closer to the topic of today.
Sure.
I think I was a little bit too good in shirking the questions.
Okay.
And
All
I
right.
just want to talk about
Yeah.
one thing, and it is my own thinking here and my
Okay.
own reflections, and I'm not saying it is finished reflections, but let me think this in. There's a book, The Little Prince, and there's a king in it,
Right.
and the king sits on a very little earth, a very little thing, a very little globe. The globe is very small, so every hour the sun goes up and goes down again, and the king, when the time comes for the sun to rise, he says, I'll order you, sun, to rise. And when the sun sets a little bit later, he says, I order you, sun, to come down. And this king really is not really ruling. In you could say he's just ordering something which would happen all in spite of everything. It just would happen anyway. And I think today the politicians, when we say the majority decides or the majority determines, it's probably better even to say the majority determines. It determines who we are being ruled by. And that ruler is always like this, that he is tolerated by the population in general. I know there are exceptions, but I just want to talk to give a broad picture. Let us say our people here, the majority of the people here, are quite happy with that government in place. Like the people in Iran probably are quite happy. The majority thinks, oh, that's quite all right to have a society like this and a government like this, very oriented. And even if they have elections, those parties generally win. So it's very difficult from one culture to the other to say, oh, that's not right or that's wrong. This is definitely not the right way to do it. Especially the West should really stop and having this arrogant position and telling other people they should be ruled like this or they should have a democracy or something. Because there is a homogeneity between the government they have and themselves. And there's one term which is today, which you hear very often, it's called popular. If a government would make unpopular decisions all the time, the people would very quickly rebel against it and show their resistance, or those decrees would just not be followed anymore. Let us say we would have a government which would say spiritual things, like a mullah would come here to England and he would govern. The people would not obey him. They would undermine all his decrees. They would not get. They would not be enforceable. That's the thing. So normally the homogeneity, and that the law of homogeneity, of direction of homogeneity, is established, is obeyed between the people, the majority, and the ruling party. There's always a homogeneity, which means the laws are so popular that they can be enforced because the majority says, yes, we obey to them. There might be some which do not obey and dislike those laws, but generally the majority obeys them. Let me give now an example of very unpopular law, which was a Margaret Thatcher law. And I remember that was whilst I was in England. She was in Hyde Park, and there was litter everywhere, and it was just litter all over, and probably you know the picture. And she bent down and picked up a piece of litter and put it into the waste paper basket and said, we should honor Britain because it's our country. It's the British people's country, and if you are British, the British people should look after their country and should keep it clean. And she passed a law which was then even which put a fine of £20 or something on someone who was dropping litter. Well, against this law, you know, against almost everything, but against this law too, there was it was so unpopular, and the newspapers were anyway writing, this law is completely unenforceable. It's not enforceable. Because if you go into front of a McDonald's, there are thousands of litter pieces. The policeman would just write down 20 pounds, 20 pounds, 20 pounds. You cannot enforce it because there's a disparity between a government who would try to force through such things, and it would not be enforceable because the people would simply not obey it, and they just would smoke the cigarette, throw the butt down, and throw their garbage down. And this is exactly how the majority rules. It is bringing always someone, it does not allow someone at the top. No one could rise to the top who really in any serious degree would not be in line with how the majority thinks and how its state is. And someone different, completely different from the majority in our investment society would be very quickly taken off that post and lose that post. But I think that brings it in more in a deeper sense that the majority decides, or the majority determines how things are, determines also the governors. They attract the government which they want all the time, and it doesn't need elections for that. In another society where it happens everywhere, like in some Muslim state, you would have a kind of Muslim government and mullahs at the top, and what do I know, and there is just not another government because it would not be homogeneous with the people. I think that is I want to give that as some food for thought. Think about it with the Grail message. Take those laws you read there with homogeneity and take that as a question. Also, in my opinion, I put that out now as a statement from me personal. I would say the majority determines and attracts the rulers which they want. And I would say almost put there at the end all the time. So I hope you could you could follow me.
Yes, thank you for that, Brother Ryna. Okay, so I'm going to go to Brother Gregory. Again, this question I'm going to ask is, you could say, trying to just examine something like, you know, we're talking about the majority deciding something, but I just want to look at it at a different angle now. So for, you know, we say, you know, peaceful way is the right way, you know, for people to live and to progress in life. But then when we do it in a peaceful way, it's what I'm sort of doing here is examining, you know, if something really works in a successful way, or there has to be some other way, not, which is like, so not trying to confuse you, but let me just start again. So basically, people would normally say, yeah, things should be done peacefully, you know, for things to work. But then when people do things peacefully, you can see it can be slow, it can be cumbersome, and you know, and even if everybody gets to do what they want, then it can be even either confusing or it just doesn't, you know, things don't happen, let's say, in a set way. while there's this other way, which is, you could call it the forceful way, where people are who are, let's say, running in power or something, and they set the rules, and then people have like a focus, and then they know they get disciplined, and this is how they should follow, like follow a straight and narrow, maybe say like that. So what I want to say really, how do we get the best of all the worlds? Should it be only peaceful ways should be followed, or should there be also some forceful ways? When things are not going the right way, you need to start slapping people and just getting them to get back to the right way, because otherwise they can be, we know that they are the natural laws, but if human beings are running life on the earth in a society, they must sort of run that life. So, for example, you need the police or you need the military to keep order or whatever it is. So what I'm trying to say to Brother Gregory, when we say there should be a peaceful way, is that just, what does that really mean? Does that mean we can't use any force in it to enforce things when things are going wrong? Does that question make sense to, I want to ask that to Brother Gregory.
Actually, the question doesn't seem to me fairly consistent with itself.
Okay.
Because something being peaceful doesn't mean it's not forceful.
Right.
When it's referred to as being peaceful, is that there is no violence as to there's no violence on other people. That is what is meant by being peaceful. Else you carry out activities which will hurt some other people undeservedly. That means they are not part of it, but you just go ahead in a violent situation to cause so much confusion. So violence may be removed from it, and then it will become peaceful. The key thing with every thing where upbuilding is needed is that first there is the need to examine the scenario very carefully. As with any scenario, there are three main things which must be considered. The scenario consists of people, or there are constituents of that particular scenario. It is not empty. So there may be people, there may be forces, there may be other things involved in that scenario. Secondly, there are laws which should order that scenario, which laws must be consistent with themselves and must be in tune with the laws of nature. And thirdly, one must give good thoughts to the power, which power transcends this scenario and makes it possible for activities to take place within this context. The second, which is the ordering, the laws which govern this scenario, must of necessity be in alignment with the laws through which these constituents came into existence. Only that will be right. Else, it will turn in such a way as to harm those who belong to this particular scenario. Also, the power, by which power one means everything that which energizes the people or the system, is not done in an arbitrary manner. One cannot force a people to to adopt a particular ideology, that may only suffice for some time, but it's never genuine. Genuineness only comes in when there is clear understanding. Clear understanding, not only intellectually, but also spiritually. When the human spirit sees the benefits, both intellectually and spiritually, it goes along. So the first task is for clear explanations, to have clarity as to why things have to be done in a particular way, not by force. For when force is brought in, it already means that those people enforcing this sort of scenario don't even understand how things came into being. So there must be clear guidelines, which guidelines were given even during the time of Christ, when he gave the Lord's Prayer and said, this is how things should be. And those who are trying to enforce things should understand that there is no uniform maturity of all human spirits on earth. Just as they themselves are not matured enough yet to understand that when you try to force a people, they will only remain quiet and will not open up to give the best which they should give in order for things to go smoothly. And that is why you have people at different levels of maturity. So once these things are understood, then it becomes simple as to what should come first, how to proceed. And if one takes into consideration the laws through which they themselves came into existence, that it did not happen overnight, but it was gradual, then you have a situation where people will mature spiritually into certain tasks, and they can now do it happily. Whatever is done with a gun on your neck turns out to be wrong, because you only carry it out. But once the gun is removed, you go back to where you belong to initially. That is the bit which one we add for now.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. We sort of come to the end of the show now. So thank you, listeners, for listening to us. I'm just going to ask Brother Ryna, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
To say goodbye? Well, I would just like to say goodbye and see you next week.
Yes, and
talk to you next week.
Yes, I'll say something once Brother Gregory's spoken, actually. So, Brother Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Well, just the same, wishing everybody well.
That's great. And dear listeners, we will be back next week, Tuesday, 6 till 8 again. I won't be here, and I believe Brother Ryna is traveling over here to London next week, so he'll be here in the studio, and I'm actually expecting one more guest to join him also in the studio, and so they will be holding fort for me. I won't be able to be here, and I know Brother Gregory will be back again, of course. And the topic for next week, yes, it's going to be forgiveness, something quite deep, really. So we look forward for you to join us again for that discussion. Just, dear listeners, just to remind you, the aim of the show is always to introduce you to the Grail message. So if you want to get more information on the Grail message, or want to get a copy for yourself, we know you can get it in many places, but we know you can definitely get it from this website, which is www.grailmessage.com, which is www.grail, message, message.com. And yeah, we look forward to you joining us next week. Thank you for being with us this week. Brother Siom is next, and we'll be welcoming him very soon. So have a great week, everyone. God bless.
You too. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.